Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling what might just be the biggest, most complex theological knot in human history. We're talking about the ultimate question of control.
We really are. We're diving right into the heart of the theological paradox. It's this, incredible tension between two ideas that both feel true. Divine sovereignty, what many call predestination or qadar.
And on the other side, human responsibility, our free will, or ikhtiar.
Exactly. And we've got a whole stack of sources here, classical texts, modern thinkers, even comparative religion and neuroscience, to see how they all grapple with this.
Because the core question, the one that just hangs over everything, is pretty simple, right? If God decides who gets guided and who gets lost, how can justice and punishment possibly be fair?
That's the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
To unpack how the source material holds both ideas at once. Look at centuries of debate and then see how it all connects to what scientists are saying about our brains today.
All right, so let's start with the text itself. To really feel the weight of this paradox, where do the sources establish this idea of absolute divine control?
Well, there are several verses, and they are incredibly direct. For example, in Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verse 100, it says, "It is not for a soul to believe except by permission of Allah."
Okay, so right out of the gate, belief isn't something you just do, it's something you're allowed to do.
It requires divine permission, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And that idea gets reinforced even more strongly.
Where else do we see that?
You see it in places like Surah Ibrahim and Surah An-Nahl, which both explicitly state that Allah sends astray whom He wills and guides whom He wills. That really locks it down. It suggests human desire can't override God's will.
And that just immediately creates this huge problem for justice. I mean, if guidance is locked behind a permission slip from God, how can you be punished for not having it? It feels like a setup.
A huge challenge. And that's why the text has to pivot almost immediately to give the other side of the coin, the human perspective.
First is about our own agency,
which are just as powerful. Think of Surah Al-Kahf 18.29. It couldn't be clearer.
Yeah.
Whoever wills, let him believe. And whoever wills, let him disbelieve.
It puts the ball right back in our court. And I think what's so critical and what a lot of people miss is that even in those verses about God guiding and leading astray.
The ones that sound so deterministic.
Right, even there, the text brings it back to us.
You're talking about the end of that verse in Surah An-Nahl. After saying God guides and misguides whom He wills, it ends with a very sharp warning. And you will surely be questioned about what you used to do.
So the synthesis is right there. It's in the same breath.
It is. From the divine, the absolute perspective, nothing happens without God's permission. But from our human, relative perspective, we are ordered to choose, to act, and we're told our choices have real moral weight. They're held in tension.
Okay, so before this whole new system of faith came along, was this idea of fate already floating around in Arabia? I mean, was this just borrowed from the local culture?
It was definitely there. It was famous, actually, but it was a completely different beast from qadar. The pre-Islamic Arabs had this concept of fatalism they called dar.
Dar, which is like time or fate.
Exactly. Yeah, but it was completely impersonal, blind. Dar was just this miserable, unstoppable force that brought decay and death. There was no God behind it, no justice, no afterlife. It was pure cosmic pessimism. Their poetry is full of it. Time destroys us.
So it was a very passive, depressing kind of fatalism.
Extremely. So when the Quran arrived, it didn't just borrow this idea, it completely revolutionized it. This was new, and it was shocking to them.
How so?
It replaced that blind, indifferent dar with qadar, an intentional decree from a conscious, just God. Fate suddenly had a purpose, and it was tied to this massive idea of moral accountability and a judgment day. That was a huge intellectual leap.
So let's talk about that leap. When the early scholars started wrestling with this, trying to balance God's power with His justice, they broke off into different camps, didn't they?
They did. Three major schools of thought emerged. The first, and maybe the most straightforward, were the determinists, the Jabriya.
And their take was?
They just took the sovereignty verses to their most literal conclusion. Humans have absolutely zero free will. We are like feathers in the wind, pure instruments.
Okay, that solves the sovereignty problem, but it completely torpedoes the justice one. You can't blame a feather for where the wind blows it.
Precisely. And that's pretty much why that school went extinct. It makes God seem unjust. So in reaction, the pendulum swung all the way to the other side.
To the rationalists, the Mu'tazila.
Right. For them, God's justice, His adl, was the number one principle. So they argued that for justice to work, humans must have total free will. We have to be the true creators of our own actions.
Which sounds good from a moral standpoint, but I can already see the theological problem.
What's that?
Well, if we are the true creators of our actions, doesn't that limit God's power? Doesn't that mean he's not the creator of everything? That feels like it's chipping away at his sovereignty.
That was the exact criticism. It almost introduces a kind of limited polytheism, with countless human creators of action alongside God. They tried to get around it by reinterpreting God leads astray to mean God just labels someone as astray after they choose sin.
But the core problem remained.
It did. And all of this tension led to the synthesis, the middle path that became the dominant Sunni Orthodox view, the Asherites and Maturidists.
And this is where we get the theory of cosb, or acquisition. This is the big one. Can you break that down for us?
Cosby is, well, it's a brilliant compromise. It says that God is the sole creator of everything. That includes the power, the ability, the energy behind every single human action. So his sovereignty is absolute.
But then where does our choice come in?
The human acquires the act. That's the cause. So God creates the energy in my arm to move. I then acquire that pre-created energy and direct it with my intention either to steal something or to help someone.
I see. So God creates the capacity and we aim it. Our responsibility lies in the aiming.
Exactly. And that reframes those leading astray verses. It's not God arbitrarily pushing someone off a cliff. It's a judicial consequence.
Like a judge passing a sentence.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's the sealing of the heart that comes after a person has been stubborn and arrogant in their rejection. A teacher doesn't fail a student randomly. They issue the decree of failure after the student chose not to study.
Now, that classical view is pretty metaphysical. When we move into the modern era, how does the thinking on this shift?
Modern scholarship tends to move away from the deep metaphysics and more toward what they call systemic laws, or sunan Allah.
Meaning God's will acts through cause and effect.
Right. God leads astray is interpreted as God simply allowing the natural consequences of a person's bad choices to play out. If you're arrogant, the natural result is spiritual blindness. God's will is the system of consequences he created.
It's also worth noting the critical view here, right? That some of these verses might have had a more immediate psychological purpose.
A very important point. Some historians suggest the strongest sovereignty verses were revealed to comfort the Prophet Muhammad.
How so?
During times of intense rejection, they essentially say, their disbelief is not your failure, it is my decree. It lifts an impossible burden from his shoulders.
And when you zoom out, you realize this isn't just an Islamic debate at all.
Not even close. It's universal. In Christianity, you have the exact same split between Calvinism, which is all about predestination, and Arminianism, which champions free will. St. Paul's arguments in Romans 9 could almost be swapped with some of the Quranic verses.
And in other traditions.
It's everywhere. The Jewish Talmud has that beautiful paradox. Everything is foreseen, yet permission is given. It's just held as a mystery. In Eastern traditions, you have karma.
Which is almost like self-predestination.
That's a great way to put it. Your past actions determine your present, but your present actions are creating your future. It's all about choice and layered accountability.
Okay, this is where it gets really wild for me. Let's bring science into this. It's just uncanny how classical determinism pops up again 1,400 years later in a neuroscience lab.
The parallel is startling, isn't it? I'm talking about the famous Libet experiment.
This is the one that showed our brains seem to decide things before we do.
That's it. They measured brain activity, this readiness potential, that initiated an action milliseconds before the person consciously felt they had decided to move.
The implication being that free will is just an illusion. It's a story our conscious mind tells itself after our biology, our genes, our environment has already made the call. It's biological predestination.
That's the hard determinist argument, yeah. It sounds a lot like the Jabriya all over again. But then physics throws a wrench in the works.
Quantum mechanics.
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It tells us that on a subatomic level, the universe isn't a predictable clockwork machine. It's probabilistic. There's genuine randomness and possibility baked into the fabric of reality.
So the brain suggests determinism, but the foundation of physics suggests possibility. Where does that leave the philosophers?
Most of them land on something called compatibilism. They basically say, okay, even if our choices are heavily influenced by our biology, we still have enough conscious control and agency to be held morally responsible. The influence doesn't erase our responsibility.
So after tracking this through scripture, history, and science, what's the big synthesis, the consensus that holds it all together?
It really boils down to this idea of layered causality. God is the ultimate cause, the first cause. His knowledge is absolute. But within that framework, he has given us a genuine, though derived, agency. Our choices are real, and so are the consequences.
And what's the psychological point of keeping this tension alive in the scripture? Why not just pick a side and make it easy?
Because the tension serves two vital purposes for the human spirit. First, it prevents arrogance.
When you succeed, you remember it was only by God's permission.
You stay humble. You didn't do it alone. But then on the flip side, it also prevents apathy.
When you fail or face a struggle, you remember you will be questioned for what you did. You have to strive.
Exactly. It's that incredible piece of advice. Act as if everything depends on you, but trust in God as if everything depends on Him. That's the balance.
So the final takeaway is that God's leading astray isn't some arbitrary act. It's the confirmation of a choice that a person has already stubbornly made in their own heart.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If neuroscience suggests our conscious awareness of a decision comes after the initial brain impulse, could it be that our true free will, our real point of accountability, doesn't lie in creating that first impulse?
But rather in our power to consciously veto it, to override or redirect it.
Exactly. Maybe accountability isn't about creating the thought, but about the conscious control we exert over it.
A mind-bending place to end. For anyone who wants to go deeper, we really recommend looking into the technical definition of cause or acquisition. It remains one of the most powerful attempts to map that very fine line between divine power and human choice in all of history.